Have you ever met the connector? Well, he ponders, he helps, he creates, he writes, he speaks. He basically connects people and brings them together. I speak about Paul Solano of PS and All Marketing Group. At psandallmarketinggroup.com, you will receive an assembled group of Paul's contacts and connections that cross into many sectors of life. Please contact Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com if you are in the market for a wide array of services. Again, please contact The Connector, Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com with any questions. And now, here's Paul Solano, the host of Paul Ponders.
Welcome to Hashtag Paul Ponders. I've really enjoyed bringing you fun, informative, intriguing, and pondering podcasts. Many thanks to Hashtag PodPro Entertainment. Today's collaborating sponsor, Scott Albertson of Hashtag Project142.org, Riverworks Credit Union, NMLS number 410564, and Remax Renaissance Realty of Reading. Thanks for listening, rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Let Hashtag Paul Ponders begin. Greetings, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well today. I want to thank you for joining us. Today's guest, it's an honor and privilege and pleasure to have Auditor Diana DiZoglio from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with us today. So, Diana, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. It's great to be here with you virtually on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Excited to hang with you this evening.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So, when did you first get involved in politics?
Oh, man, that is you're making me go back in time here. I actually never thought I was going to be involved in politics. This was not part of some 5-year plan or 10-year plan. I actually got involved in politics when I was in my 20s. So just 2 years ago, you know?
Exactly.
Why are you laughing, Paul? Why are you laughing?
Sorry about that.
I'm just kidding. So I'm 41 now. And I'm about to turn 42 next month. And I got involved in politics, I want to say, 14-ish, 15-ish years ago, more or less. And I actually started working at the State House as a legislative aide. And I had no idea what the legislature did when I first started in that role. I got offered the job because I came from the community that the state rep was representing, Lawrence. And I speak fluent Spanish, and he wanted somebody who could connect with the community and had deep roots in the community. And he hired me, and I learned about all the great things that our government can do, from investing in education and infrastructure to fighting to make sure that people have adequate access to health care and all sorts of just wonderful things that state government can play a role in. But I also learned about the flip side of state government during that very short time serving as a legislative aide. And Paul, I was actually sexually harassed while I was working in our own state house on Beacon Hill as a legislative aide. And the way that they thought it was appropriate to deal with that harassment back then was to fire me and then require that on my way out the door, I sign away my right to speak about that harassment up on Beacon Hill.
Wow.
At our own state house by signing a taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreement meant to silence me about everything I had seen, witnessed, or experienced amongst the most powerful politicians in Massachusetts. But I didn't let them get rid of me or keep me quiet, and I didn't leave state government like they told me to do. I instead decided to run for state representative myself, and a little over a year later made my way back into the same chamber that had just dismissed me as the youngest woman serving in the House of Representatives at that time. And I ended up fighting as a state representative and then subsequently as a state senator for transparency, for accountability in how Beacon Hill does business. I shined a light on how those taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreements, your tax dollars, were going towards silencing people about abuses in state government, not just harassment, but all types of abuses can be hidden in our state government with our taxpayer dollars actually funding the cover-up. I shined a light on those issues and many more issues around transparency and accountability for 10 years as a state legislator. I served as 6 years as a state representative and then 4 years as a state senator. And then recently in 2022 was very humbly elected to be the state auditor for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, representing 351 cities and towns, and have been using the platform of state auditor to really fight for justice for our communities and for increased access to what's happening up on Beacon Hill and across state government by shining a light as your state auditor in the dark places of state government, fighting for efficiency, fighting for effectiveness, and making sure that we know how our tax dollars are being spent and ensuring that there's increased accountability to ensure that those tax dollars are spent in an appropriate manner. So I've been doing this work and I've been really humbled to have this opportunity to do this work. And I'm so grateful just to be able to come on the show to be able to talk about some of that.
Wow, I'm totally blown away, Diana. I've known you for quite a few years. We met many, many years ago at the Feast of the Three Saints on Labor Day weekend. And I've done a lot of work in the nonprofit world. And I know that you've done a little work in the
Yeah, thanks for your
nonprofit world.
service. It's
Thank
not
you.
easy, my friend. It's
Oh,
not.
it really isn't. It really isn't. But it's really all about just getting to what the mission is, the mission of the charity, the nonprofit and all. And it's just something that we've recently worked over the past few years with our dear friend Kevin Childs
Yes.
on Boston Bruins alumni games. And we've worked with that, raising money for the Boston Bruins Foundation. And I had no idea that what you have endured and what you went through. This is totally news to me.
Yeah, it's the story of so many, Paul, across, unfortunately, not just state government, but across all sectors, right? Is
Mm.
just people dealing with challenges in the workplace and, needing to find a way to stand up to the powerful and the privileged about abuses of the powerful by the privileged. And, it's a story of so many workers and so many folks who are trying to navigate their way through those spaces. And, I have to tell you, I never thought I was going to be the state auditor. Contrary to popular opinion, I wasn't hanging out in the fourth grade, fantasizing about auditing government entities. I thought I was going to be a singer and running a youth center right now. And it's interesting because I do sing all the time now, every opportunity I get, because, I'm passionate about it. I still love it. And I did actually get to use my time in the state legislature to secure funding for our local youth center project in Methuen, which I'm very passionate about that as well. But look, God had different plans for me, and I followed God's lead and really, invested in what I felt was the right thing for me to be doing at this time and through the last several years. And it led me to this place where, I'm doing something I never thought that I would be doing. And I get to help a lot of people in the Commonwealth in a way that I, never thought was really something that was helpful. I never looked at audits like, oh man, like auditing and auditors, they're like folks that like help people in the community, right? You think, oh, they crunch the numbers, they cross the T's, they dot the I's, they, look at the financials. But actually, in the Office of State Auditor, and we have roughly 200 people that work in our office across the state of Massachusetts, our auditors, they work hard every day to help people in our communities. They don't just look at the taxpayer dollars themselves and whether or not, those financials are lining up perfectly. They do look at that, but they also look at performance, process, procedures, and programmatic effectiveness or ineffectiveness. And they tell different state agencies where there is room for improvement. And I'll just use, look, the MBTA. Everybody knows that the MBTA has been riddled with challenges year after year after year. And, it's been through various administrations. Not just one administration has had challenges with the MBTA. The MBTA has really never properly served the residents of this Commonwealth, I would argue. And in recent years, we've seen trains catching on fire, constant derailments, ceiling tiles falling, with near misses for passerbys. That's unacceptable. We need to do better here in the state of Massachusetts. It's a multi-billion-dollar system. We pour our tax dollars into this. We need to make sure that riders are protected, that employees are protected, and then our taxpayer dollars are protected. So we audited the MBTA recently. We put out a series of multiple reports that highlighted ways to improve service at the MBTA. We audited contracts that they had entered into. We shined a light on inefficiencies regarding a lack of training on, you guessed it, safety in one of their contracts that they had with a private company out of Kentucky who is charged with doing station checks. We found that station checks weren't always happening. So we made sure to put that in the audit report and call on the MBTA to ensure that employees were getting trained appropriately, that station checks were happening in a timely fashion. And just to make sure that there's overall better management of these contracts to make sure that, again, riders and taxpayers alike are protected. We audited the Department of Children and Families recently, and we looked at mental health services that children are being provided with through the Department of Children and Families, who's charged with overseeing certain aspects of the care that these children are receiving. And we found that regarding mental health services, too often, these kids were actually being prescribed medications that were antipsychotics, that were very powerful drugs that were not being appropriately overseen or monitored, and they weren't getting behavioral health services alongside of these antipsychotic or psychotropic powerful medications. So basically, they were being given the medicine and not being provided with a therapist, with a counselor, with behavioral health supports to make sure that the child was properly cared for. And, if these kids are traumatized kids, they enter into the system, oftentimes, obviously through no fault of their own, and they don't have the type of family supports or community supports that they need to be able to succeed. That's why they enter the system. So it is Department of Children and Families' responsibility to make sure that once these kids enter the system, that there is oversight over the prescription drugs that they're being provided with, that there is, adequate access to behavioral health opportunities and care for these kids. And we identified ways to improve those services. And, DCF, to their credit, they responded with a commitment to immediately getting to work to try to address these challenges. There are a lot of really great social workers and workers who work in these agencies who are doing their very best. A lot of times it comes down to a lack of funding, a lack of training, and a lack of appropriate management. So we did highlight that to DCF, that there's a need to really provide increased oversight in these areas. And they responded with the fact that they're committing to take immediate action. And we'll be following up soon to see how that's going. But you wouldn't think, Paul, that in the Office of State Auditor, those are the types of things that we're looking at. You wouldn't think that we're looking at opportunities to increase safety or opportunities to increase access to mental health services for children. But that's the type of work that we do, that we want to be able to do more of. We do have a limited budget, but we do, as much of that type of work as we can, and, really take these jobs seriously. And we do try to use, what we have, where we are, to do good things for our community and to help make government work better. That's the mission of the State Auditor's Office, to help make government work better.
Without a doubt, and I'm totally blown away with the scope of your office. So I applaud you for the great job you are doing. And just a quick side note or a question regarding the Inspector General's office. Is that does that office work hand in hand with you, or does that fall under your purview?
So it actually is a separate entity. We work very well with the Inspector General's office. They have a really great and solid team over there. They're doing really good things. There is some overlap, so we do communicate quite often. They can do auditing as well. So if they're auditing something, obviously we want to be able to know about that so we're not duplicating efforts. And sometimes it's easier for the IG to pick something up. Our office has to follow very strict government auditing standards when we conduct our audits. The Inspector General's office is able to do separate reports, a different style of reporting that they do. And, so we'll have discussions and talk about who's doing what and try to make sure to the best of our ability that we're not overlapping. But different from the Office of State Auditor, the Inspector General has the oversight authority from the state over municipalities. So a lot of people will come to me and say, can you please audit our city budget or our city school system or, something that's going on locally? Our office actually doesn't have the authority to audit cities and towns. We could certainly go in and provide services to them with certain respect, but it would be more like contracted services that we're providing them rather than oversight authority over them. The Office of the Inspector General is the oversight entity for cities and towns, and they're the ones that can do investigations locally, whereas the Office of State Auditor has its purview only with state entities and state-funded facilities. So if it's state taxpayer dollars and it's a state entity, that's the Office of State Auditor. The IG gets to provide oversight to municipalities.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thanks for clarifying that and for explaining that. Now, I have to ask you about something where over 72% of the electorate agreed with you, okay? They supported the 2024 ballot one question overwhelmingly, okay? And if you want to let our listeners in Paul Ponder's land know what this ballot one question was and where it is today, please.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. 72% agreeing on anything is really just amazing. Let's be real. If you think about, your romantic partner, if you don't have one anymore, think about your last romantic partner. Think about how often you agreed or disagreed. 72% of the time is 72%. It's an incredible thing to bring people together in this way. And what brought people together was our shared desire for good government. Good government is not a partisan issue. And I'm a registered Democrat. I've worked with registered Republicans, Democrats, unenrolled, Libertarians, Green Rainbow Party, whatever your party affiliation is. The Office of State Auditor does want to work with you to make sure that our government is working the way that it is supposed to. And there is a time for political conversations during campaign season or what have you, right? Where, everybody pitches their platforms and the debates are had. And, we respect that. People have their opinions and they need to be shared, and we should all be transparent about what our opinions are. And it's okay to disagree and it's okay to agree. And I'm very excited that 72% of voters in Massachusetts agreed. That's Republicans, that's Democrats, and that's everybody in between. The most liberal to the most conservative groups in Massachusetts endorsed the ballot initiative to audit the state legislature with Question One. And we had the Republican Party of Massachusetts and the Democratic State Committee in Massachusetts both endorse the audit of the state legislature. When is the last time that the GOP and the Democratic Party agreed on something and both endorsed the initiative? I can't think of a time. So I am really, really excited that because we came together, because we put the partisan rhetoric aside to come together for what we know is the right thing to do, we were able to pass Question One to audit the state legislature to get some transparency about what's going on Beacon Hill, something that I've been very passionate about for a long time. And now we passed this with 72% support back in November. It is now the law. It is not a recommendation. It is no longer up for debate. It is the law in Massachusetts. You, the voters, made it the law. You voted for it. The same way the legislature gets to go in and vote on what's law, and then the governor signs it into law. Well, when you vote for a ballot initiative here in Massachusetts and it passes, it is now the law. So this is the law here in Massachusetts. And I hate to tell you, Paul, but the law is being broken by the legislature right now. They are refusing to be audited by my office, and they are refusing to comply with the law that you all just voted for. And I'll let you know, we've only asked for financial documents, and state contracting documents. High-risk areas in the state legislature where we feel people are concerned and they want to make sure that their finances, that their taxpayer dollars are being spent appropriately, that contracting is being executed appropriately. We've looked in different state agencies and we've actually found that no-bid contracts in the hundreds of thousands of dollars were given out unlawfully. We don't know if that's happening in the state legislature, if the unlawful execution of state contracts using your taxpayer dollars are being doled out to people when they shouldn't be. And if we are, actually having a lawful and ethical process regarding state contracting in the state legislature. We can't get access to basic financial receipts that are a matter of public record for all other state entities who are required to follow the public records law. If you come to my office and you ask for financial information, we're required by law to demonstrate that for you. State legislature exempts themselves from the public records law here in Massachusetts, and now they're trying to violate the audit law that you just voted for. Where does it end? Where does it stop? It's unacceptable, and if you have nothing to hide, why would you ever refuse an audit? We're not the FBI. We don't walk into people's offices and toss desks and take cell phones. We don't have that type of authority, nor would we want to do anything like that. We're just trying to look at the process, procedures, and information that is relevant to an audit to make sure that we can draft a report, put that report out there to you, the tax-paying residents of the Commonwealth, so that you can be informed about how your tax dollars are being spent, and so we can increase accountability up at the State House that we as taxpayers fund. And to be denied access to information about how our tax dollars are being spent, it's absolutely unacceptable, Paul, and it's deeply disturbing on many levels that any elected official would think that it's okay and acceptable for them to break the law and withhold information from tax-paying residents of the Commonwealth that has to do with their taxpayer dollars and how they're being spent.
Wow.
So we have essentially, unfortunately, rather than having a democratic style of governance and a democratic process here in Massachusetts, we have instead a tyrannical form of state government and more of an authoritarian regime operating at the State House and the state legislature. And I know that's, a very strong way to describe it, but that is the unfortunate reality. When you have the Speaker and Senate President refusing to comply with the law and saying things like, and I quote, compliance is in the eye of the beholder, when it comes to the law, that is a really scary place to be in. I don't know any of us who would get pulled over by a police officer, for example, going 120 miles an hour in a 30 and get to look at that police officer and say, oh, excuse me, compliance is in the eye of the beholder. I'm not going to comply and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's what the Speaker is saying to the general public right now, that, he just believes that compliance with the law is in the eye of the beholder, and therefore he's going to continue to break the law. And you know what, Paul? He's not really scared that anyone's going to do anything about it, because right now the Attorney General is refusing to take action on this. We have over 150 pages of communications with her office, repeatedly asking for her support, trying to give her, all of the answers that she needs to her many, many unending questions about why we want to settle this legal dispute in a court of law. And honestly, the Attorney General is doing this, I believe, with the intention of keeping us out of court. She will not even state that she is willing to represent my office or represent the people. She will not state that lawmakers need to start following the law. And she has repeatedly, decided that she's not going to make a statement about that she's going to say that, she supports the audit, but then she's not going to do anything to help us to ensure that the law is enforced. And that's the job of the top law enforcement officer in the state of Massachusetts, which is the Attorney General. I'm not an attorney, so I cannot really, see why she believes I should draft her legal analysis for her. I am the auditor of the Commonwealth. It's my job to audit. We're doing our best to give them the answers they need, the information that they believe that they need, to be able to say that they are willing to enforce the law and that they're going to enforce the law. But essentially, she's, making excuses for why she's not enforcing the law and dragging this out. And I do believe that it's to keep us out of court. And, I would love to hear the Attorney General come out and say that the law needs to be followed and that lawmakers need to follow the law and that they need to give us these documents. But she's been unwilling to do that. So this is being stalled. The AG's office is blaming our office for not drafting and coming up with her legal analysis for her. We've done our best. We're not the Attorney General's office. We are seeking help from the Attorney General's office because they are supposed to be the people's attorneys and they are supposed to be defending the people of this Commonwealth. And we haven't been able to get that to occur, no matter how much we advocate, no matter how much we call. So we are at this point asking for the Attorney General to state, we've been asking for months, to state if she is willing to represent us, which clearly she's not, that if she is not willing to represent us, that she does need to afford us the opportunity to get our own attorney, because we do need that to be done through the Attorney General's office. It's the way that the law is written here in Massachusetts. We're supposed to go to the AG's office. We need her to allow us to get a special assistant attorney general of our choosing to represent us in court. But she's refusing to even allow us to get our own special assistant attorney general. So we are in this place right now of waiting, and people keep asking me why we haven't done the audit. I've been practically begging the AG to help or to at least let us get our own attorney. She's been refusing to budge and been pointing the finger back at our office, scapegoating our office and gaslighting our office. And, we're at a point now where all we can do is continue to advocate to folks in the communities to let them know that we're doing everything we can, but we can't sue the legislature without the Attorney General, deciding what she's going to do here. And she is not happy with me right now that I'm saying this publicly. But that's the reality of the situation. So when folks wonder why we haven't sued the legislature, why this audit hasn't gotten done, well, because the wagons have been circled up on Beacon Hill. Everybody's talking to each other, and folks are covering for one another to make sure that we're not able to get access to the courts. And they're, sort of hoping that eventually this just dies out. That if they keep talking about, the lawsuits at the federal level and the fact that they're suing the president again, or, something that happened at the White House again, that folks will just forget about what's going on here in Massachusetts. And that will be the only thing that's talked about. And well, look, what's happening at the federal level is incredibly important for us to discuss. We should not, lose sight of the fact that these things are happening at the state level. And it is our responsibility as state officials to make sure that the state law is followed. And right now, the state law is being broken. And that is unacceptable. So we are calling for action from the AG. We are asking for the governor's support. I'd love for the governor to assist in any way. This isn't something that's really been on her radar, unfortunately, and it really needs to be. We really need the governor to step up, to call for action, to rally alongside of us. And we need the Attorney General to allow us access to a court so that we can finally sue the legislature and get action, because the law is being broken and taxpayer dollars are being spent with no oversight, essentially, right now by our own state legislature.
Wow, this is truly, truly upsetting, yet very enlightening to me, Diana, about what you've been enduring. And I remember hearing that you actually walked from the westernmost city or town in Massachusetts all the way across Massachusetts and you hit all 351 cities and towns, I remember.
Yeah. That was fun. It was tough too. I kind of got ahead of my skis there with some of the routes that I picked. I didn't really plan for road construction. It was kind of just put together last minute. And I was like, this is a good idea. I'm going to do this. And I went out and it was a good time. We navigated our way through. When we got to the Worcester area, it was a little challenging with the road construction, so we had to go around it. But yes, I walked from Western Mass along the New York border and walked across the state in Central Mass to the State House in Boston. So not technically speaking, from exactly one side to the other, but from really as far out as we could fit in with the schedule that I had available. And yeah, I walked from out in the Berkshires to the State House in Boston, and it took several days, obviously. I'm going to tell you, I didn't realize how old I had gotten. There was some joint pain, admittedly, and I was like, all right, so we need to start taking care of the joints at this age. But it was fun. I got to meet a lot of great people, wore yellow every day, the campaign colors for the Sunshine campaign. And look, the result was we raised awareness, and we had to do that, Paul. We had to get creative in that way because the people on Beacon Hill that do not want this to occur, they are very, very powerful, much more powerful than I am up on Beacon Hill. I am the state auditor. I'm really humbled and honored to have this role, but I don't have as much power as, the speaker or the Senate president when it comes to, influence in the traditional sense of things, right? I audit state agencies, but, I don't have access to earmark opportunities for people or passing legislation into law, those sorts of things, right? So it was really challenging to really continue to raise awareness around this because I had a lot of people saying, hey, Diana, we really, really, really support what you're doing and we love what you're doing. We're fully behind you and we're going to vote for it. But we just can't support you publicly, or we can't donate to the campaign because they were scared that the speaker, Senate president, and the powers that be up on Beacon Hill were going to see their name on that list and retaliate against them and block the legislation they were pushing or block, something that they cared about. And I did hear that, the speaker and Senate president's people were calling around and, not in a not so veiled manner, threatening people. Why did I see you in a photo with Diana DiZoglio? Oh, you donated to this. There goes your bill this session. Oh, I thought you wanted to be able to succeed up on Beacon Hill. There goes your career. Things like that were being said during this time period to people. And, they think that that's all part of the game up there and that they have a right to do that. And they have so much power that they don't need to care about how that looks or how that makes people afraid of advocating for what they stand for. But they do it purposefully. They do it to set an example, and they do it to control. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And these folks have way too much power. And Paul, we can agree and we can disagree. And that's okay. That's a democratic style of governance, right? Where disagreements happen. We don't have to agree on all the issues. You might be on the opposite side of an issue. And okay, that's your right. That's my right. But according to the speaker and Senate president, it's their way or the highway. And that's a very well-known thing up on Beacon Hill. You have to go and ask permission to vote off from what the speaker tells you to do. If you vote off, you're ostracized, you're alienated, they talk trash about you. They, try to teach you a lesson and make an example out of you. So a lot of people were afraid to get involved with supporting the ballot question and to do it publicly. So yeah, it was really challenging. And I chose to walk across the state because I figured, this is something that's, crazy enough that the press might pick it up and, write about that we're walking across the state and where are we and what are we doing? And are they kidding? They're doing this campaign where she's walking across the state, so it generated conversation because it was something different. And, in generating that conversation, it raised awareness.
Right.
And it was a creative way to raise awareness. And it did raise awareness. And we got some awareness raised about the campaign without necessarily being able to continue to bring in those higher dollar donations that other campaigns were able to bring in because they weren't a direct affront in the speaker and Senate president's mind to Beacon Hill. And, I say all the time, look, I served in the legislature for 10 years. I love the state legislature. I have a lot of friends in the state legislature that I actually really do care about. And I love them as humans, and their, conversations with me recently have been very awkward. They're scared to talk to me. They're scared to be seen with me. It's hard because, speaker and Senate president view transparency and accountability as though they are affronts to them personally. They view this audit as though it's an affront to them personally, that it's a challenge and a reprimand to them personally. It has nothing to do with these folks personally. It has to do with getting access to how our taxpayer dollars are being spent and increasing, transparency so that systems are functioning better to help make government work better for those it's there to serve. And shame on anyone who turns an audit into some personal threat to themselves and then, wages a war against an audit of our taxpayer dollars. That is wrong. That is wrong. You can love your legislator and also love transparency. You can love your legislator and also want to make sure an audit gets conducted. And shame on anyone who tries to manipulate their way out of this audit or, personally insults anyone who's associated with this audit. We've had a lot of personal insults come towards our office. Our staff has dealt with really shameful behavior by some legislators, the way they've treated our office staff. And, they're trying to do their jobs. They're trying to obey the law and implement the law that you voted for. And, they're being blocked from being able to do the job that you told them to do. So we would like to be able to do our job. We'd like to get this audit done. We don't have the ability to cut funding like what you see at the federal level. We don't have that type of power in the Office of State Auditor. I'm elected by the people. I'm not appointed by the governor or by anybody else. I'm elected. So I answer directly to you, the people. And all we're allowed to do with respect to this type of an audit is simply audit and produce a report. We can't cut budgetary spending. We can't add budgetary spending. Really, we just are there to audit. So what is the problem? If there's nothing to hide, open up the door, let the sun shine in, and let's get this done. Enough with the antics, enough with the law breaking, and enough with the excuses. The tax-paying residents of Massachusetts have had enough. They made their decision. It's time to follow the law.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. So, really, I want our listeners in Paul Ponder's world just to really take heed and take notice with this podcast. We have not had a politician on. We have had an elected official who truly, truly cares and has, in fact, made an impact in so many lives in just bringing transparency to state government and to life. So what do you think the future has in store for Diana DiZoglio?
Oh, man, if I could remember what my schedule was like this week, I'd probably have a better answer for you, Paul. But look, I get asked this question quite often these days, and I think that the profile of the office has really been raised. And that naturally causes people to ask what's next. It's like you start dating someone and immediately it's like, well, when are you guys getting married? Then you get married. When are you guys having kids? And I think that it's totally natural for people to ask, what's in store? What's next? What are you planning for? But full honesty here, I get this question a lot. I am focused on doing my job right now, and I know, next year is an election year, so I have to start thinking about this at some point sooner rather than later. But right now, it's not an election year. I'm focused on doing the work of the people and making sure that these audits get done, that they get done in a timely fashion, and that I am seeing this issue through. I want to make sure that this issue is followed through on, that I am following through on making sure that this issue gets resolved. I want to make sure we get access to court. And that takes really, between the work of the office and then fighting the fight on this issue with the most powerful politicians on Beacon Hill, essentially trying to get rid of me to make me not able to do my job. It's really taken all of the energy that I have. So I am grateful that it's not an election year this year, so I don't have to think about these things right now. And I can focus on doing the work of the people and getting this job done. And, when the time comes, give me a call. We'll have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, a recent podcast for Paul Ponders was on Focus, FOCUS. And I created the focus of fixating on certain ultimate sites. And what you have done with the Ballot One initiative and what you've done of basically focusing in on what's important now and that is really transparency in state government. And I applaud you for what you've done. So how do our listeners contact you?
Yeah, and let me just end with saying it's about doing what you can where you are with what you have, and that's a motto that I heard a long time ago that I have very much followed. You don't have everything, you don't have everyone, you might not have all the resources, you might not have as much power as others have, but if you do everything you can with what you have where you are, you will be able to make a difference and move things in a positive direction, and if it's a baby step, then take the baby step, and keep going forward. But thanks so much, Paul, for having me on. Folks can actually reach out to me. All my information's up online. If you just do a quick internet search of Diana DiZoglio, it'll pop up. If you want to contact me on the official side, you can reach out to me at auditor@massauditor.gov. And if you want to reach out to me on the campaign side at some point, Diana@DianaDiZoglio.com. And all that information's up online.
Thank you. And Diana, again, thank you for being on, for taking the time and the interest to be on Paul Ponders, and we will catch up with you soon.
So great to be here, Paul. Let's keep pondering about how we can make government work better. Have a great night, everyone.
#indeed. I trust that you have enjoyed Paul Ponders. Again, my name is Paul Solano of PS&All Marketing Group, and I may be reached via email at paul@paulponders.com to do some more pondering. Many thanks to my longtime collaborative friend and associate, Chalonzo Amos of Pod Pro Entertainment, in bringing you our fun, exciting, informative podcasts. You rock, Techie Chalonzo. With PS&All Marketing Group, I created a side gig to connect you and get things done. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at paul@paulponders.com with any questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paul Ponders. Follow us on Twitter at Paul Ponders Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Paul Ponders Podcast. Thank you again for listening to Paul Ponders, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, paulponders.com, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment, Paul Ponders lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. The new radio. Until we meet again, my friend, stay well. Indeed.